Hello again, grade 12. We're going to finish the last chapter for this revision, inshallah, which is going to be about transport in mammals. Okay, when we're talking about transport in mammals, the first thing that comes across our mind is that we're actually going to talk about the circulatory system, which composes of the heart, the blood vessels mainly. Okay, the circulatory system for a mammalian system, it's not like the fish or any sort of thing. It actually consists of a double circulation. Why? Because the blood here passes through the heart twice in one circulation. Okay, the circulatory system also includes what, as we said earlier, it consists of a heart and a blood vessels, which are composed of the arteries, the veins, and the capillaries, which is the tiniest blood vessel. The arteries and veins contain 3 layers of tissue known as the tunica intima, tunica media, and tunica externa, and each one of them consists of its own tissue. The tunica interna, the internal or the inner layer, it consists of, or it's made of, the endothelium, sort of a tissue, containing squamous epithelial cells. The tunica media, the middle layer, containing smooth muscle and elastic fibers and collagen fibers. Meanwhile, the last, or the external layer, consists of elastic and collagen fibers. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the arteries, and remember to always differentiate between the arteries and the veins. They are not the same when it comes to the building structure. For the arteries, these blood vessels actually, what do they do? What is their function? They transport oxygenated blood, but sometimes arteries will have a role of delivering non-oxygenated blood. I'll tell you about that later on when we actually explain it on the heart image. Okay, they have thick walls. Why is that? To actually withstand the high pressure. When the blood flows, the first thing that actually flows, bumping the blood from the heart through the arteries to the rest of the body, requires a highly thick wall to actually withstand the high pressure of the pump. The exception to this is the pulmonary artery. This is what I was talking about, because it carries deoxygenated blood to the lungs. So practically, or as a general idea, that arteries do carry oxygenated blood, for one exception, which is the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery, that artery which is related to the lungs, because it carries the deoxygenated blood, the blood that does not contain oxygen, to the lungs. As arteries reach tissues, they branch into smaller vessels called arterioles. Okay, the tunica media and externa contain the elastic fiber that recoil and contract, squeezing the blood so it can be moved along in a continuous flow. They allow the walls to stretch. Why? Because they consist of elastic fibers. One of the properties that the elastic fibers give this artery or arteriole is the ability to actually stretch as the pulses of the blood surge through. The tunica media also contains a smooth muscle which contracts, reducing the blood flow in the arterioles. This controls the volume of the blood flowing into a tissue. And the increased collagen in the tunica media and externa gives the artery the strength, structure, and flexibility. The capillaries, the tiniest part of these blood vessels. The arterioles continue to branch into a smaller form which we call capillaries. These are the smallest blood vessels, and they take the blood as close as possible to the cells. This allows for rapid transfer of substance between the cells and the blood. Okay. As for the veins here, Sorry. Okay, as for the veins, many capillaries join to form venules. So we agreed that the smaller form of the arteries, or the tiny branches of the artery, are called arterioles. Meanwhile, the branches, or the tiniest form of the veins, is called venules, which join to form veins. These blood vessels carry deoxygenated blood. So the first, or actually we would consider it as the second differentiation between the arteries and the veins, is that arteries in general, they carry oxygenated blood, with one exception, which is pulmonary artery, that carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. And as for the veins, the general idea of the veins, how they actually functionize, is that they carry deoxygenated blood back to the heart, with one exception, which is the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood. That means blood is filled with oxygen from the lungs to the heart. There are few elastic and collagen fibers and smooth muscle in the vein when compared to the arteries. So the arteries have more because they withstand the pressure or the high blood flow coming from the heart, as the blood in veins is at low pressure. The valves that happen to be present between each atria and ventricle, they functionize as a gate, more likely, but once the blood flows from the atrium to the ventricle, they close to prevent the backflow of the blood. To keep blood flowing upwards from legs, veins are usually near the muscles, so pressure is increased when the muscle contracts. And veins also have a much larger lumen than arteries. This is the comparison between the blood vessels, the artery here and the vein. Look at the tunica externa and the intima and the media, and look at the lumen in the artery and the lumen in the vein. Okay, the blood here is composed from 4 components. I'm pretty much sure that you came across it while you were on grade 7, 8 and 9. Okay, the plasma, the first thing, which is the liquid part of the blood, and it's diluted solution of salts, glucose, amino acids, vitamins, urea, and protein and fats. Then we come to the leukocyte, or the other name of it is white blood cells, involved in the immune system. The platelets involved in the blood clotting, and the erythrocyte, or the other name of it, the red blood cells, is involved in carrying oxygen. The tissue fluid, the fluid that actually surrounds all the cells, the substance moves from the blood to the tissue fluid, and from the tissue fluid, and then they diffuse into the cells. It has almost the same component as a plasma, but it doesn't have large plasma proteins because they are too large to diffuse through the capillaries. And this is a transverse section through a small artery, and this one is through a vein, as you can actually notice the difference between them. Okay, adaptation of red blood cells. What does make the red blood cells actually adapted for its own function? As we all know that the red blood cells functionize as carrying oxygen, and it contains the hemoglobin to transport the oxygen. Okay, so we have first of all the biconcave shape, increases surface area, volume ratio for more efficient diffusion of oxygen. And it contains hemoglobin to transport the oxygen. Also, the nucleus mitochondrion and the endoplasmic reticulum are absent. More room for the hemoglobin, thus more oxygen carrying capacity. Okay, the heart. The heart here, the external structure of the heart, the blood vessels that leave the heart are the aortic arch and the pulmonary artery. Blood vessels that enter the heart are the superior vena cava, the inferior vena cava, and the pulmonary vein. The left and the right side of the heart, they are separated by a septum. This is for you to actually memorize. Please do focus the external structure of the heart. The blood vessels that actually leave the heart are the aortic, the major artery, and the pulmonary artery. The blood vessels that enter the heart are superior vena cava and inferior vena cava and the pulmonary vein. The left and the right side of the heart are separated by septum. Meanwhile, the internal structure, the heart has 4 chambers, the atriums and the ventricles. Look over here. This is the aorta, this is the pulmonary artery, this is the left side. It's always the opposite of ours. So this is the left side, this is the right side. This is the left atrium. The chamber on the top, it's called atrium, and those in the bottom, they are called ventricle. And this is the barrier that actually divides the heart into 2 sides, the left and the right. It's called septum. Okay, and here we've got a semilunar valve. And here we've got a bicuspid valve. Bicuspid valve because it only gets attached to 2 sides. Meanwhile here, the tricuspid, it has a 3-sided attachment. Okay. Not quite sure it's actually clear. Okay, the atria. We've got 2 upper chambers known as the atria. They are thin-walled and receive blood at low pressure. The ventricles, which are the ones in the bottom, they are 2 lower chambers. They are thick-walled because they receive blood from the atria and pump it through the arteries. The left ventricle has a thicker muscle wall and it has to pump blood into the systemic circuit, which has a high resistance to blood flow than the pulmonary circuit. The systemic circuit is also longer and requires more pressure. So because the blood enters from this side and it goes through the pulmonary blood vessel to the lungs to actually be oxygenated and then get back here and then to be pumped all over until it reaches the aorta, so the aorta actually takes it to the rest of the body. So this side has thicker walls because like almost all the pressure is on this side. Okay, the cardiac cycle here is divided into 2 stages, but we will have the cardiac cycle in the next video, so stay tuned.